Hey guys, thank you for listening to the Splash Tag podcast. I just wanted to say that I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to this podcast, and I also wanted to let you know that I'm aiming to be a little more consistent with the content I release. And so I'm thinking that every Monday or once a week, I want to release at least one episode. And on top of that, if I have the time and energy to add additional content with that. So, in other words, maybe a podcast and some other additional content, potentially 2 episodes in a given week. But at the bare minimum, want to at least release one episode a week, and therefore, it would also be greatly appreciated if you took the time to subscribe on whatever medium that you're listening to this podcast on. Once again, really appreciate it. And now on to the conversation that I had with Jason. What's up, guys? You're listening to a July 4th edition of the Splash Tag podcast. Today, I'm joined by Jason, a frequent guest of the pod. And today we're going to do a redraft of the 2011 NBA draft. How you doing, man?
What's up, man? Happy 4th of July. I just watched a man eat 75 hot dogs in 10 minutes. So really feeling in the barbecuing mood.
Time out. Are they still doing that this year?
Indeed,
like,
yeah.
Virtually?
I watched the live. It's all virtual. It's in like this. It looked like a basement of a bar or something, and each contestant, there's only like 5 of them, had a plastic, see-through barrier in between. All the people delivering the hot dogs were wearing masks. There wasn't outside of like just the people checking how many hot dogs you were eating. There wasn't any spectators. There was an announcer, so he could really hype them up, but it was insane. This guy, Joey Chestnut, ate like 75, and the closest person next to him was like closing in on like 40, and that was it.
Wow. That competition just blows my mind.
Unreal, dude. 10 minutes, man. Like, how many hot dogs do you think you can eat in 10 minutes? Like, realistically.
Like, maybe like 20.
Ooh. I was thinking
15?
like
15?
I was thinking like 5 to 10 range. Like, these are some big hot dogs.
Are these big hot dogs? Okay.
Maybe. Yeah, like if you go to Costco, it's like one of those type of hot dogs.
Well, okay. So if you're talking, yeah, maybe. I mean, I'd get sick of them first, but I the way I look at it is like I feel like I could eat like if I was like really hungry, I could eat a full pizza. So I'm trying to think of like in terms of like my stomach capacity, what's the equivalent of a full pizza translated to hot dogs? Even though it's not a 1-to-1 thing, but I don't know.
I don't know, man. It's a lot of hot dog to consume. It's very salty. I feel like you'd be throwing up if you're trying to force that much into your body.
You know what? I'll go down to maybe like I'll say like 8, 10. One a minute.
Next time I see you, I'll bring some hot dogs, dude. We'll work it out.
Oh God. That is just that thought makes me a little sick. But anyhow, so you and I were talking about doing a redraft, and I've done the 2010 one. That's also available on the Splash Tag feed. So if you haven't listened to that, go listen to that. I encourage you to take a listen to that. But so right after 2010, obviously 2011, and I thought that 2011 is a draft that has a lot of good players. Something that I'm sure that you and I will kind of discuss as we were doing our research. There's a lot of like solid NBA players and some really good NBA like future superstars in this draft. So that makes it an interesting draft. Plus, it's been 9 years, so it's like that's been enough. It's enough time to kind of realistically and fairly evaluate a lot of these guys. So
over under. Do you think there are 2 Hall of Famers in this draft?
Oh, that's over.
That's over. Oh,
there's 3. Wait, there's 3.
You think there's 3?
I think there's easily 3.
I think there's a solid 2 question mark on a 3rd, but we'll see.
All right, we'll see who. We'll get there in a second. And this is the way we do this. We don't have any rules necessarily. We're sticking with the same teams per se, but you can do it based on kind of what they accomplished, combined with a little bit of, if they were maybe in a better situation, I think they could have accomplished even more. However you feel like assessing these, as long as we're just here to have fun, discuss a little bit, and you're a Rockets fan, as we've established before. So as a result, I wanted you to have the 14th pick, which they had in this draft. So I'm giving you the evens. I'm gonna take the odds. Sound good?
Okay. Yeah, and just want to preface too. So when we're also thinking about injury risk and saying, if we redid this person's career and pretend like if they were just healthy the whole time, right?
Yeah, yeah. So you're saying you're working under the assumption that they're healthy?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah. I'm fine with that. I mean, at the end of the day, we're just shooting the shit in the barbershop.
Gotcha.
But yeah. So I guess I'll start. The first pick in the actual draft, it was Kyrie Irving, who actually ended up being obviously an All NBA performer, a superstar. But in the redraft, I'm gonna have to take Kawhi Leonard because I just the way I look at it is, he's the only one with multiple Finals MVPs, and yes, I recognize that he was lucky. He ended up in literally like the perfect situation in San Antonio. But I feel like, with this, I have to assess, with at least the first pick, I need to assess the guys based on what they've actually accomplished.
Yeah, I mean, that's very straightforward. The only consideration here is, again, what type of situation would you have with Kawhi Leonard when he was coming out of college? There was a lot of question marks about his shooting.
Yeah.
And he was raw. I think he was a sophomore coming out of a small school. Like
San
people
Diego
forget,
State.
San Diego State.
Yeah.
West Coast bias here. Not a lot of people probably saw him play, but I mean, he was tenacious in terms of defense. He had pretty good frame coming out of college. Another interesting note is, do you remember how Cleveland ended up with the first pick here?
Yeah, they traded Baron Davis, or the Clippers traded Baron Davis. They wanted to get rid of that money, and so they attached the first round pick with 0 protections on it. And it was the 8th likeliest to become the first pick, and it ended up as the first pick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, imagine Kawhi on the Cavs, right? Like, they were bad.
Not only were they bad, that organization was not. I'm gonna call it how it is. It hasn't exactly been a great situation for guys to get better.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So yeah, and it's ironic you bring up the Clippers because obviously that's where Kawhi's playing now. But yeah, like I said, if you imagine Kawhi starting his career in Cleveland, I doubt he ends up where he is today. But at the same time, with this, I think I just need to assess the guys based on what they've actually accomplished, at least for the first pick, like the first few picks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cool. So you're on the clock as the T-Wolves. The real pick was Derek Williams, who I'm gonna be honest, I thought he was gonna be a game changer in the NBA. Granted, I was in 7th grade, so my scouting prowess hadn't fully developed. But I assume the pick for you is not going to be Derek Williams.
Yeah, I can 100% guarantee it's not going to be Derek Williams. Don't know who he is as a person. I mean, he's been in the league, so that's all you can really.
Not in it anymore, though.
Not anymore, but I mean, he's if you make it in the league longer than 5 years, and I would say no matter fair. Where you draft, you've had a decent career, right?
That's fair.
By 5 years in, you're considered a vet, and you sort of made it there. With this pick, I'm going Jimmy Butler.
Holy! Whoa! Okay, let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Yeah, because I'm looking at the list, and when you're picking, top 3, top 5, you're looking for like a franchise lead, like someone you point to and be like, all right, this is our leader here. I completely understand that Jimmy Butler has bounced around different teams, but no matter what team he's on, he's the alpha. He is the face of the franchise, the person taking the most important shots at the end of the game. And I kind of like him with Kevin Love. Kevin Love at this point, I'm not sure at this point. Yeah, he was still on the Timberwolves at this time. So I really like that inside outside, just tough guys. Kevin Love just grabbing boards. Jimmy Butler really leading team in defense and whatnot. So I like this pick here, and I just like his tough attitude, and I think he potentially could be a Hall of Famer.
Wow. Okay, so wow. Okay, I'm gonna. So you bring up two Hall of Famers. To you, are those two Hall of Famers Kawhi and Jimmy Butler?
Yeah.
Wow. Because when I said that there's quote unquote definitely three Hall of Famers, I love Jimmy Butler. I actually defended his exodus from Minnesota from a lot of people. I actually don't consider Jimmy Butler a shoo-in Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's as, he's not going to be a first ballot, but I think he'll end up there. I think he's still got some years on his on his career that he can add in,
Yeah,
and maybe get a chip or something. But I fully believe he should be in the Hall of Fame.
I think he'll get there, but I would put two guys ahead of him that we haven't picked yet, which which is why I said definitely over two, at least three. But for me, if there's gonna be four, it's gonna be like Jimmy Butler's that fourth guy. But that once again, that's just how I was. That's just kind of my board. But I'm a little bit surprised, even though I really like Jimmy Butler. I actually like Jimmy Butler more than the guy I'm probably about to take. But I'm a little bit surprised, I must admit.
Look, I mean, if you want to put some advanced stats here, I'm looking at this basketball reference, and he technically has more win shares than Kawhi Leonard. I think it's a testament to the miles that he's put on compared to Kawhi Leonard, and I think he's a lead guy, and I think there's a lack of players that's just an all around taking out of the offensive side of things. You got to go with the defense, and I think he's a bigger guy than maybe your next pick here that I think might be next, but we can debate that once you make that pick.
Wow. Okay. So, yeah. So moving on to three, the pick was the Jazz. This was the pick they got from the Darren Williams trade. So they have just traded Darren Williams. Jerry Sloan a few months before this draft had stepped down. Rest in peace, Jerry Sloan. So as much as I would love to take Klay Thompson here because I love Klay Thompson, I think that he's a lot easier to build, I think he's a lot easier to integrate into a team than the guy I'm going to take. The fact that this team has just lost Darren Williams, they don't have their point guard of the future yet, and I'm going to have to take Kyrie Irving. And I know that he hasn't exactly been the easiest guy to play with. I'll put it this way: his leadership and just kind of how he gets along with other guys has definitely been controversial to say the least. But at the end of the day, you have a guy who's going to shoot at least 37% from the 3-point line. He's going to shoot around 45% from the field. He's never going to get you like he's never going to get you like 8 assists per game, but you can always count on him to average like a quality 22 to 24 along with like 5 to 6 assists. He's obviously hit one of the iconic shots in NBA history, and he's played in a lot of high stakes games and showed up quite a few times. I guess if you discount the Boston series against Milwaukee, he showed up. So I'm going to have to take Kyrie here, even though I personally would rather play with a guy like Klay Thompson. There's just more question marks with regards to, can Klay Thompson be your number one guy?
Yeah, I mean, it was for me a toss up between Jimmy Butler and Kyrie, and then I think at the end of the day, I just value more of what Jimmy Butler brings to the table. I feel like there's a lot easier ways to fill in the offensive side of things. You might get a plus, maybe plus 5 or 7 points more from Kyrie, but I think the defensive side of things, Jimmy Butler's a dog, right? He's going to guard probably the best, like point guard, shooting guard, small forward on the other team, even power forward on the other team. Like he's willing to take up those matchups, and I just don't think Kyrie. He's got the size and durability to bang with a larger guard or something like that. But that's besides that. I mean, he's a great offensive threat, but I feel like I value more of a well-rounded guy when I'm going with the picks here.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I absolutely could see that. And I love Jimmy Butler. He's an absolute dog, like you said. But I think, at least, like I said, with these top 5 picks, I kind of look strictly at kind of what have they accomplished, and I know a lot of that has to do with the teams they've been on. But when I look at that, it's hard for me to say that Kyrie Irving should fall lower than 3
Yeah.
in this redraft.
Yeah.
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 So,
Okay.
yeah, number 4, we're back to Cleveland.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I was jumping back and forth in terms of the picks here, but I had to go Kemba, dude. I had to go Kemba on this one.
Whoa. Okay. Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Again, like when I was thinking back to like just, who would I rather have? I'd rather have a lead dog. And it's someone that is going to be the number 1 guy. You're probably surprised I didn't go with Klay, but I just think I don't know if he's the lead guy, and I think there's been a lot of pull because he was playing with Steph Curry. He's playing with other players that his job was a little bit easier in terms of his offensive production. Not to put aside his defensive side of things. And I mean, I love Klay Thompson. Shout out to Tony Bennett when he played at Washington State, but I just think Kemba is just like a lead guy. Like I still remember watching him playing the Big East tournament and just destroying like that step back on the Pittsburgh player, like that. And I think like he's again another face of the franchise. If we're following this draft order, you're pairing him up with Kawhi Leonard. Would you rather have Kawhi Leonard and Klay Thompson or Kemba Walker and Kawhi Leonard?
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
So my counter to you isn't Klay Thompson a little more like what Jimmy Butler brings to the table in terms of a two-way player, but also someone who can get his own offense going, whereas Kemba is a little more like a Kyrie. It's like a kind of a discount, not like a mini Kyrie.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, that's why he got picked after Kyrie. But between Jimmy Butler and Klay Thompson, I'd rather see Jimmy. Well, I guess just from observation, right? We've seen Jimmy Butler act as a lead guy, and again, I don't know how much of Klay's ability to create on his own, or is it more because there was a gravitational pull of playing with Steph Curry? I don't know. So I would rather go with what I've seen, and that's why I picked Jimmy Butler over Klay Thompson. And then with Kemba Walker, I just think like he is the face of a franchise, be it in Charlotte, and although personally knowing that Charlotte was trash with Kemba as the guy, but I think that's more to say kind of the pieces around him, and then. In Boston too, I think they perform much better as a team with Kemba as a lead dog. Although Tatum is probably better, but I still think it's Kemba's team.
Okay. Real quick point on Kemba is that his first couple years in the league, he actually didn't shoot it great from the field, or from the 3-point line, and obviously he's solid now. He's above average in terms of his both field goal percentage stats. But I would say that if I know there's definitely a corner of the internet that is very anti Trae Young and whatnot. But what I will point out is when you look at Trae Young versus Kemba in terms of their first few years in the league, and then you combine that with the fact that they have similar statures and they're both more offensive oriented players. I think that's, if you're a Trae Young or a Hawks fan, I think that's a good sign. I think that bodes well, looking at Kemba's trajectory and then kind of seeing how Trae Young has compared so far.
Yeah, I mean, he's like averaged 17, 18, basically 18 after his rookie year. So
yeah,
I mean that's very solid production. Again, I like his late career renaissance in terms of shooting threes. He's now a solid like over 35% basically later in his career, which is a good sign. And now that he doesn't have his quickness to get into the lane and make layups, I'm liking that he's developed an outside game.
Cool. Let's keep it moving, I guess, to number 5. I'm surprised he's still on the board because I was considering putting in number 2, Klay Thompson. I think we're both going to be in agreement here. it's probably the pick.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely the pick. Again, like I think he's the. Would you say he's if you like said Michael Jordan to Steph Curry, how would you say Klay fits in terms of the Scottie Pippen role? Like, what percentage of Scottie Pippen do you think Klay Thompson is? If you said made the comparison, Michael Jordan to Steph.
I mean that. I mean he's. I mean in the sense that he kind of is the perfect fit. Like I would say he is kind of the wingman or the Scottie Pippen to Steph per se. The one objection I do have to what you're saying, which or not what you're saying, but what you had brought up earlier was, we don't know if Klay can be the number one guy. Uh, I understand that, but I remind you as a Rockets fan that when Steph went down in 2016 in the first round against you guys, Klay had some games where he was absolutely cooking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But again, like if you're looking at his career, right? Like
Sure.
he's averaging 2 assists a game compared to
Sure.
like basically almost if you round up a little bit 2 turnovers, right? So again, he can get hot. I've seen it. I felt it. It sucks. It's like you ever see like when someone gets the ball and like they rise up and you're like, I already know what's going in. Like I don't even care what his follow through is, whether or not someone's defending him. It's just like when someone is feeling it, like Klay, it's truly just the most frustrating thing ever because he just needs to get the ball and
Yeah.
he'll rise up and he'll just shoot over someone and his shot is just so pure. One other thing, I'm looking at his basketball reference. I love looking at the nicknames, but Klay Thompson's nicknames are Big Smokey,
Killer Klay.
Klay, and the Electrician.
I've never heard of
I never heard of that one.
I've never heard of any of these, honestly.
Yeah.
But one thing I will say is that I do like Klay's like selflessness in that he's never made it about him. He's always been very happy playing with Steph, and then when KD came, he still did what he was supposed to do, but he never heard him pout like I need more shots or whatever the case may be. And he's always played a huge role on the defensive end. Like I've seen him guard Kyrie Irving in the finals, and I've seen him guard Kevin Love and LeBron. So it's like, he's guarding multiple positions, doing a decent job at it. And like I said, he's definitely a team first guy. So I really like Klay. I'm surprised he fell to 5, but
and yeah, don't forget this is the post Chris Bosh, so this would have been Klay's team. I think we're like a year away from Kyle Lowry coming in.
Yeah, it's still DeMar DeRozan's there. DeMar DeRozan.
Oh, DeMar DeRozan, right? So you're pairing DeMar DeRozan with Klay. So I mean, it's solid team.
Yeah. So number 6, our hometown team, the Washington Wizards. They took Jan Vesely in the draft. I don't even think Jan Vesely made it.
Dude. Hot girlfriend, dude. I'm not sure if you saw his the draft.
I saw the draft. All I will say is I don't think he made it more than 4 seasons in the league.
Yeah, I mean, I think he had a pretty successful EuroLeague, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
But who are you taking for the Wizards here?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a big cutoff between the top 5 and everyone else. So these are looking at some complementary players. Probably not your best player. You don't want them to be your best player, so maybe second best player. I'm going Vucevic, Nikola Vucevic.
Wow.
I think he's a very slept-on player because he's been playing in Orlando
Sure.
for the last couple of years, but he puts up numbers, man. I'm not sure if this is like an empty calorie type of stat line, but he's basically set for a 2010 consistent. Like that's what you're gonna get. Did not know he played at USC. That's just did not know that. Yeah, no idea. And he played for Philly for 1 year.
He was in the Dwight Howard trade.
Yeah, he was in the Dwight Howard trade. So he played in Philly and then moved to Orlando. Took a couple years to kind of get acquainted, but I mean you just lock him down for like basically 20 and 10 every single night.
Okay, so he is an all-star. He's a decent passer for a big man. He's, in his all-star year, he averaged about 4 assists. Generally, he gets like 3 assists, which is like solid for a big 7-foot center. But my question to you is, like, I agree, he's definitely a solid guy. You can pencil him in for 20 and 10, but and maybe I'm just judging too much by the postseason. But it seems like he's a guy that can definitely in a series where there's game planning and a specific matchup. It seems like he's a guy that can easily become a lot less effective based on his style. He's more of a traditional center, a little slower, plotting center. Back to the basket. What do you think? What do you think about? What do you think about that?
Yeah, but I mean, it's I do admit he's probably going to get exposed a lot more in the playoffs. I mean, just from his team success in Orlando, they've seemed like they're always like the 7th or 8th seed, and they get swept. And it's like, oh, thanks for coming, thanks for the ride, good season, and that's it. But I think his consistency in terms of just his 20 and 10, you mark it down. You probably need another franchise type of guy, but he's a solid number 2 or even number 3, like a less tough Zach Randolph. How about that?
Oh, okay. I mean, you put him with John Wall, maybe he would be looking a lot better. Like he's asked to do a lot in Orlando. Here you take him at 6, you put him with John Wall. Maybe he gets. I mean, maybe he would get paid instead of. They would have had him in the big man role instead of Marcin Gortat. So,
yeah, I was literally thinking,
Gortat was solid.
Yeah, Gortat was solid, but this guy's probably got more offensive production than Gortat, which would take the load off of John Wall.
I agree. Okay, that's a fine pick. I had him a little lower, but I don't think it's ludicrous. On to 7, we're gonna get a guy who went 60th in this draft, and ironically, he's going to end up at the same team, the Kings, unless they trade the pick like they did in the actual draft. I'm taking Isaiah Thomas. He's the last All-Star / All-NBA player still on the board, and yes, right now he's not quite where he was when he was in Boston. He obviously peaked in Boston, but those Boston years were honestly more impressive than any season Kemba's had, in my opinion. When you look at, he was averaging 29 points a game, 6 assists, 46% from the field, 38% from the three-point line, and 91% from the line, 76 games played. And then they went to the conference finals, were the number 1 seed in the East. He's also a fun guy to watch. Like, yeah, he's not exactly going to be a defensive stalwart, but you at least know that he's going to be a fun guy to watch. He's going to be able to score and be incredibly effective and get his own shot off on the offensive end. And like I said, he's the last guy on the board who has an All-Star game appearance or any All-NBA appearances as well. So I'm taking IT.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate because there's a clear drop-off from his 2016-2018 season with Boston where he was averaging like 29 a game, shooting like 38% from 3. And then after that, he barely got over like 30%.
Yeah. Quick point on IT. He's actually a free agent right now. He got traded at the deadline, but then he got waived by the Clippers. I don't know. I'm curious. I'd be curious to see if any team wants to sign him as a replacement player. But what I will say is I got to see him actually live. This is when he was in Washington. I got to see him in November, ironically playing against the Kings. And I know he's obviously not the same player that he once was. He was averaging, like 12 points a game on decent shooting in Washington. But he's still a guy where, and maybe this is just the eye test and the basketball junkie in me, but he's still a guy that when I watch him play, I feel like he can get his own offense.
That's for sure.
And a guy who you feel like could easily quickly get hot in a couple minutes and get you and swing, lead your team on a 12 to 2 run or whatever the case may be, right? So, I get it. He's not, when you look at where he is right now and where we project him to go, he's obviously not, a Kemba, or even some of the guys that we might discuss later. But he's still a guy where I feel like offensively he can still at least get his shot off when he wants.
Yep, got it.
Cool. Number 8, the Detroit Pistons. Who you taking?
Yeah, so ironically, this player has actually played for the Pistons later in his career. I'm going Tobias Harris.
Okay. He was my 8 as well, actually.
Yeah. So I actually had him above Isaiah at number 7.
Okay.
So he
Gotcha.
falls
Gotcha.
right into this 8th spot. I mean, he's again solid, probably second best, third best player on your team. Doesn't hurt you. Does a little bit of everything. Good size. Plays the 4 and plays the 3. Took some time for him to bounce around the league and really find a spot. I think once he got to the Clippers, he really found his stroke there, and he's still young, dude. He's like 27, 28 right now, so he's not even hit his 30s. Solid career. Again, can be your secondary ball handler. Can probably play good defense, play make. Just a guy that's not going to hurt you as a team.
Yeah. I mean, he was also like a fringe all-star. Like he was like almost an all-star when he was on the Clippers. So I think that he, when it comes to the next group of guys, he's definitely the top guy of the non-all-stars in this draft.
Yeah, and hopefully he comes with Bojan though.
Yeah. So on to number 9. This, in the original draft, this was the Kemba pick. And I'm actually really torn here because I have, you know what, I'm going to take Bojan here because Bojan, so in the actual draft, he was the first pick in the second round. So he was the 31st pick. And he's a guy who I've always felt like he comes through in the playoffs. Like I always feel like on both sides of the ball. Like I've seen him play decent defense on LeBron when he was in Indiana. He's always provided a lot of on the offensive end as this 6'8" guy that can shoot, but also is kind of crafty around the basket. He's always shot it well from the field, and he shoots around 40% from the 3-point line. And like I said, I've seen him be a winning player in the playoffs. So number 9, I'm going to take a guy who went in the second round originally.
Yeah, I mean, I like him as a player. I had him a bit lower compared to others because I think he's more of like just a very complimentary, like a very nice to have player that's like, you know, in the 6th man or your 4th best player, but super valuable. And if you have him, he's very solid. He was an older prospect, and
Yeah.
which is strange because a lot of European players are a bit younger when they come in. But yeah, he was a little bit older coming in, and I think he really found his stride once he made it to Indiana. He had some solid flashes, making trips in. Started off up in Brooklyn, and then he had his trip in Washington, which a lot of things happen when you go to Washington. You suck, and then you go somewhere else. You're like, oh no, he's actually very competent.
Yeah. And I think it's important to note, like, a lot of the guys that in this next kind of like 9 to 15 range, they're all kind of comparable. So there's not a huge gap between the 9th guy and maybe like the 14th guy. So it's kind of like just flipping a coin at this point. But I will point out, I mean, he in last offseason, he literally just got a 4-year, $70 million contract. So like that tells you that he is still in demand, like right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And this would have been the pick that would have sent him to. This is the.
This was going to Charlotte. They kept this pick.
Gotcha.
Now the pick you have is now that 10 is the Bucks. They traded it to Sacramento. It was in the original draft Jimmer Fredette. So who you taking instead of Jimmer?
Yeah, I had these two as I was bouncing around between these two players, and I think at the end of the day, I'm going Tristan Thompson.
Okay.
I think again, like you forget when he was a really big part of the Cleveland teams that played against the Warriors. I mean, he was playing crazy minutes early in his career. He was a super mobile guy. Lost a little bit of that, but I mean, was a solid 10 and 10. Plays good defense, just grabbing boards and stuff. So I would say this is his career right now is probably his ceiling. Like this is probably the best you could have hoped for. I don't think he would have developed his offensive game, but I really liked him early in his career where he was more of a very mobile guy playing the 4 instead of the 5, but now it's more transition to a permanent 5.
Okay, that's fair. I'm not really a Tristan Thompson fan. I could. That's a whole discussion for another day. Not that he's a bad player. I think I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I just think that he was like you said, he was literally in the perfect situation where he homies with LeBron. Uh, and then obviously LeBron comes back to Cleveland, and then Love goes down, so he has to play big minutes and whatnot. Anyhow, so okay, so Tristan Thompson at 10, at 11 with Golden State. I'm going to take a guy who actually is not in the NBA anymore, in that he did not play a single second this current NBA season. And this might be a bold pick, but I'm going to take Kenneth Faried.
Ooh, okay, that's spicy. All right, let's hear it.
Okay, so Kenneth Faried. Did the league, the fact that he was a little undersized and not exactly a great versatile defender, that is probably what did his – that was probably his undoing in terms of how he ends up on the Nets and the Rockets and not really doing a whole lot. But Kenneth Faried, his first 2 years, he's on good Denver teams. His second year, that was the Denver team that was the 3 seed and won 56 games. George Karl, Coach of the Year, Masai Ujiri, GM of the Year. So he was a starter on that team. He's always been a tenacious rebounder and a guy who plays really hard and very mobile. And to me, the thing that I think I'm overvaluing, I'm curious to hear what you think. This guy started on Team USA in 2014 and was actually one of the better players on Team USA. And to me, like, that matters. I think that there are obviously some attitude, or I guess, I don't know, off the court issues. I wouldn't say off the court. I think there were issues with regards to how he maybe got along with teammates or coaching staff, but I just feel like we saw glimpses of what Kenneth Faried could be. And then at some point, like once Brian Shaw was the head coach, or maybe a couple of years after Brian Shaw, it kind of just went downhill from there. And then before you know it, he's out of the league. He was actually decent in Houston during the regular season for like 25 games, but yeah, I'm taking the Team USA component and thinking that if he was in a better situation, i.e. next to Steph Curry, and hopefully eventually, other good players in Golden State, I think that his career could have looked a lot better.
Yeah, man, and shout out Morehead State too. Do you even know where Morehead State is?
I do. They're in Kentucky.
Oh, there you go. All right.
Kentucky. He's the NCAA all-time leading rebounder, more rebounds than Tim Duncan, who's number 2.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I like Kenneth Faried. I had a chance to watch him at a couple of Rockets games later on, but I think what I really knocked him down was he seems like a guy that you like when things are going well.
Yeah. Okay.
It's again like he was a starter. I think in the Team USA, it's more that they needed someone who was physical and could just really basically manhandle any other teams and can't match up against his physicality, which is a big part of him.
To an extent, yeah.
To an extent, yeah. But I guess I really don't know what happened. Like, he just kind of fell out of favor and then started bouncing around. I'm not sure if injuries also cost him some of his athleticism in terms of grabbing rebounds, but I don't think he was a basic zero in terms of playmaking. Wasn't really a good scorer. He was mostly just, lobs, offensive rebounds, putbacks. And defensively, again, he was undersized, right? Like he had to play the 4. Guess he could be a small ball 5 with good pick and roll and stuff like that. But I just felt like you could get a little bit more from top 10 pick than Kenneth Faried.
Sure. Okay. I mean, I'll buy that. Like I said, I think I'm just going off the idea that I think if he were in a better situation, maybe things look better. And like I said, the fact that he was playing ahead of guys like DeMarcus Cousins on Team USA and Andre Drummond, I think the bottom line is that he's going to, at least when he's in a good situation, he's going to play really hard, and that is where we saw the best of him, right? So I'm going off of that primarily. But like I said, it's a little bold because he's not in the league right now, and he obviously hasn't been relevant for a couple years. But I'm taking a swing. Yeah.
Yep. So this was pick number. Let's see. This would have been pick number 11.
Yep. Now you're at 12,
and this would have gone to the Jazz who originally picked. Yep. outbursts. So yeah, with number 12, this was the guy I was debating between Tristan Thompson. I'm going Valanciunas. He's like a beefed up version of Gortat. Solid guy where now I think with, albeit on a bad Memphis Grizzlies teams, he's like basically averaging, close to 20 and 10. I felt like he was always hyped up because he was like a really big, important piece in Toronto, but I think he got muscled out in terms of, the league was shifting more toward pace and space. But you got to remember, he's got some good, offensive skills around the basket, which I really like. And, obviously he's a big guy, grabbing boards, probably can lock down the paint. But, with this day and age, he's just not mobile enough to be guarding everyone. So that's probably what knocks him down a little bit here.
Yeah. Wow. Sort of unrelated, but I actually wrote down Jonas at like the 7-8 range, and then I crossed him out and put in Vucevic, and then I forgot to put him back on my board. So that's why I just took Fareed, because honestly, I would take Valanciunas over Fareed, but dang, that's an error on my part. But I agree with you. I mean, like he's definitely a little bit like of what I said about Vucevic. He's a guy that's going to look better in the regular season than in the playoffs. But he's also a guy who is like has skills and can do different things and at least be productive. At the end of the day, you're not getting like a scrub, right? When you're taking him, even though he might not be a guy you want to build around or whatnot, he's a decent piece. So I'm with you there. And he was on good Toronto teams. Obviously, he was part of the Gasol trade that kind of helped push them over the top. But he was starting and being productive on some good Toronto teams. So I think that's a very good pick. Pretty good value at 12. So
by the way, his nicknames here, JV, Lithuanian
I've heard that.
Lightning.
Have not heard that.
Big Science.
Have not heard that.
Don't know where the big science is coming from, but okay.
Ironically, in the original draft, the Jazz took a guard and a big, and a plotting big. They took Burks and Cantor with the 3rd and the 12th pick. And then in this redraft, they do the same thing, but I think they get Kyrie and Valanciunas, which is obviously a lot better. So
that's pretty solid.
Yeah. But yeah, anyhow. So 13, my last pick. Wow. With the Suns. This is a tough one because I know you got 14. Okay, you got 14. You know what? This might be a pick where I actually take the guy who went in the original draft. I'm going to take no, actually, you know what? I'm going to take Marcus Morris over Markieff.
Yeah, that's completely fine because you know what I wrote down on my board? I wrote a Morris twin because I swear they're basically...
Same.
Yeah, I was like, I mean, for number 11, I'll just take the average of Markieff and Marcus. And, they're basically... They had, I think, mirrored careers where I think Markieff had a better start, but Marcus later in his career is better. And I think someone had a stat where they basically had the same number of career points at the end of the day. So
Marcus, they were really good when playing together statistically, but they both kind of played their roles on playoff teams once they kind of went separate ways.
Yeah, and I think Marcus, he can play more of the 3 compared to Markieff, where he's stuck more in the 4 role. I think Marcus is better at shooting 3s later into his career.
Yep.
Compared to Markieff, but I think Markieff was a very solid guy on the Wizards. He was definitely really important in their playoffs where they make it to like the second round and lose to Boston or something like that. Yeah.
And then Marcus was at least, granted his efficiency wasn't great, but he was at least good on that team, the Boston team that went to the conference finals without Kyrie and Gordon Hayward. And then he was also a starter on the team the year after for a lot of the season, the 2018-2019 season, where he averaged 14 points a game, 6 rebounds, 38% from 3, 45% from the field, 84% from the line. So Yeah, and I think that Marcus, like you said, he's a little more equipped to be on the wing, like playing that kind of 3 role. So I think he's a little bit better defensively. Like if I recall correctly, I think Marcus has always. Feel like Marcus was always the guy that tried to D up LeBron when they played in 2018, and I like that. Like I granted LeBron still went ballistic, but I like the fact that he wasn't afraid of LeBron.
Yeah.
So wow, so I take that to mean that at 14 you're taking Markeith.
Oh no, I wrote
Oh,
down Marcus Morris
oh,
twins. So
okay.
I
Oh,
packaged them together, and we just picked the collective of
okay,
the
gotcha,
Morris family
gotcha,
with
gotcha.
the number 13 pick, and with number 14, this would have been my Rockets, and it's a homer pick, but I'm going with a guy who didn't actually play in the league this year, although I think he should have. Mirotic,
Mirotic,
Nikola
okay.
Mirotic,
He was
solid
on
guy.
my board. Yeah. Yep. Go
Yep,
ahead.
solid guy. Can play the four. I totally would have seen him as a small ball five. Can stroke the threes theoretically. I don't think it might have translated super well, but I mean he's a solid guy on with mobile stints on good teams. Really wish if he stayed on Milwaukee. I'm not sure if they would have been able to pay him, but he's a career 35%, 36% shooter from three. Just a solid bucket getter. Can stretch out the floor for you, which I think would have fit perfectly within the Rockets system.
Yeah. I think that's a great pick, especially for what we know that Houston likely will become, given that Daryl Morey's at the helm. Yeah, the one thing. Yeah, I mean, Mirotic was actually on my board, but like I said, a lot of these guys in the teens, like they're kind of, or the 9 and beyond, they're kind of interchangeable. So it just felt right to pick a Morris twin somewhere in the 12, 13, 14 range. But I really like Mirotic. He was, I mean, as a rookie, he was playing crunch time, or not crunch time. He was playing quality minutes for the Bulls that were a 3 seed and almost knocked out Cleveland. It was Tibbs last year. And then similar deal in New Orleans. He was in the finishing lineup for that team that upset the Blazers and then played Golden State in the second round. Same deal with, once again, he's in Milwaukee. It seems like as a tall guy that can shoot, he's always been a guy who at least will find his way to the floor, even though his defense sometimes gets him fewer minutes in the playoffs than the regular season. But I like that pick. I think it's a very Houston pick. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, and shout out to him, man. He made that whole controversial pick to not play in the NBA, go back to the Euro League, play in the La Liga, and he probably got the best end of the deal here because he got this play in Spain, which is fantastic. He was named MVP.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to go through this whole quarantine and making sure that he's healthy,
Yeah.
bubble. So you know what? Shout out to him, man. He made a career choice for himself, and nothing but respect for what he, his ultimate decision for the season. And
Yeah.
maybe he might come back. Maybe he's resigned to be staying in Spain and kind of riding off into the sunset. He had his little sting in the NBA. He basically played four seasons. So shout out to him.
Yeah, get your dough, dude. Like I'm not blaming him at all. Get the dough, man. But
yeah, I think he was about to sign with
Utah, wasn't
Utah.
it?
Yeah, he was about to sign with Utah.
But then they went with Bogdanovich after they couldn't get him.
Yeah. So I mean, don't know if he would have found success in Utah. I think Utah was had a rocky start. They had a bunch of new additions, but I think he was like about to board the plane. He's like, dude, I'm going to Utah. Like, nah.
Maybe, but yeah, I like that pick, and I think we're both in agreement that he's not in the NBA by choice. He easily would have been on a team for a couple years. So it's not like Kenneth Faried where it's like he couldn't find a team this season. It was like, he just was like, I can get paid more and have a better time in Europe. Yeah.
All right. So you want to do a quick recap of our picks and then maybe give a special shout out to the guys that could have made our boards but didn't make the cut.
So wait, our order goes Kawhi, Jimmy Butler, Kyrie,
Kemba,
Klay Thompson. who do you take 6th?
Vucevic.
Isaiah Thomas 7. At 8, you went with Tobias. At
Yep.
9, I went with Bojan Bogdanovic.
Then I went
Tristan Thompson. I go Kenneth Faried, Jonas Valanciunas, Marcus Morris.
Morris twin.
A Morris twin. You know what? Let's just say it was Markieff, it was Marcus, it was both. Whoever you want it to be, it was one of them. And then Mirotic. So real quick, honorable mentions, I guess. Shumpert.
Yeah, I had him. I had him probably in like my 17 range, I guess. Yeah, 17, 18.
I'd say Shump man. I'm gonna be honest, Brandon Knight. I feel like Brandon Knight's career
ended when he got dunked on.
No, first and foremost, I was a big Brandon Knight fan heading into this draft. I will say, I feel like the way his career has turned out is literally one of the worst possible scenarios, where he's on these Detroit teams. They're not that good. He gets traded for Brandon Jennings. He's a fringe all-star on the Bucks, and then he gets flipped to Phoenix, which was a dysfunctional situation, and then he just keeps getting hurt. So
yeah.
So I feel
he averaged like 19 in a season. I think the 2015 to 2016. So he's solid.
Yeah. So Brandon Knight, I feel like if he was in a better situation, his career would have looked a lot better. Reggie Jackson.
Yep, had him too.
I had him on my board, not in my top 14, but on my board. Trying to think. Chandler Parsons.
I had Chandler Parsons.
Yeah, there we go. This draft honestly has a lot of dudes who like had solid moments, like quality moments where you're like, oh, that dude's good.
Like, you don't forget, Chandler Parsons got a max.
Yeah.
He got the money, man. He secured the bag.
Yeah. I agree. I feel like he's another guy where like if you take away the injuries, like that dude would have been a lot. I think a lot more people would know who he is and really appreciate what the kind of player he was. But on top of that, like Montejunas was like okay, I guess.
Yeah, I think for me, I put Corey Joseph.
Corey Joseph is still in the league, and he's
solid
good.
Guy, solid guy. Nice that he went to the Spurs, so he really got that career development there. I also had Cantor, who
Cantor, yes. Cantor.
I feel like his career has really been tainted by that one clip where you zoomed in on the coach and he was
Billy
like,
Donovan,
I can't play him.
Yeah.
But he like. Again, he's like a discount version of a couple guys that were in this top list, Valanciunas, similar to Vucevic and stuff like that. It's just solid guys who could mash it up in the paint, put backs, got a little bit of offensive flavor there, but just defensively probably would have been exposed in the playoffs. And I also had, someone, if injuries didn't really cut things short, I had Bertans.
Okay. I was gonna say I forgot he was in this draft. Honestly,
undrafted. That's the thing. You had to go into the Wikipedia.
No. Davis Bertans. He got taken 42nd. His brother another Bertans got taken undrafted.
Oh, gotcha.
I think it's his brother. It's his brother, isn't it? Let me check.
Yeah,
Darius Bertans, I guess. Yeah, he's the older brother of Davis.
Ah, gotcha.
But yeah, no, I forgot he was in this draft, low key.
Yep. So those were the guys that just didn't make the cut, but I mean, solid overall top 14. All these guys are. I think everyone that ended up getting drafted was definitely worthy of a starting spot on a championship team. So that's all you can really ask for.
And I'll also point out a couple more honorable mentions. Etuan Morris is still in the league and he's decent. Like he's not. I mean, he's more of like a 6th, 7th man, but he's decent in New Orleans. So Etuan Moore. Also, Alec Burks got hurt a lot, and I feel like there's a version of Alec Burks' career that ends up a lot better than what we've seen. I mean, he got a decent extension in Utah, so that meant that they believed in him too, And then also Bismack Biyombo had one conference finals game against the Cavs where he had 26 rebounds, and he got like paid fat by the Magic. So that means something.
One game, dude. One game.
But and a career related shout out I want to give to a guy that in this draft is Nolan Smith. He was only in the league for 2 years, unfortunately, and then when he was overseas, he tore his ACL, and now he's now he works at Duke, so I see him every time, Duke plays UVA. He's, he was obviously a decorated Duke player, but low-key, he was one of my favorite college players to watch when I was in middle school, and he was the first professional basketball player I ever got the chance to meet, and he was super nice, and I took a picture with him, and I told him, and I got to have a quick conversation with him. Super nice guy. So he didn't quite have the NBA career that you would hope for a first-round pick, but I just wanted to give him a shout-out.
Yeah, I think he had like a terrible injury during a summer league game, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
But real quick before we sign off here though, who was your Hall of Famers though? You said 3?
Oh yeah, Kawhi, Kyrie, and Klay.
Okay, I had Kawhi and Jimmy Butler.
I think Jimmy Butler's gonna get there.
Yeah, but I guess I was hating on Klay. I just kept thinking it might be a bias because I'm a Rockets fan, but I just again like always thought he was second fiddle to Steph Curry, but I could see Klay.
No disrespect, but if Dennis Rodman's going to end up in the Dennis Rodman's in the Hall of Fame. If Dennis Rodman's in the Hall of Fame, Klay Thompson's got to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. All right. I'll amend it. It's going to be 3.
So you don't have Kyrie? You don't have Kyrie at the moment, or?
Yeah, all right. Yeah. I guess it's 4. I guess, but that's I guess I'm really thinking like surefire Hall of Famers.
Surefire is the only one that I think. I don't know.
It's got to be Kawhi.
I think Klay's in. in.
First ballot?
I don't know about first ballot, but I think he's in.
Yeah, that's
same with Kyrie. Yeah. But yeah, okay. I like it. I like you going with the swing at 2. The less conventional, or I think the less popular pick.
Jimmy G Buckets, man. Jimmy G Buckets.
I love him, dude. He's a dog.
Mm-hmm.
He's a dog. But speaking of which, real quick last note on Jimmy Butler, but low key, like I was thinking about this the other day. I looked at the Heat's roster, and assuming none of their guys pull out of the Orlando bubble, like the Heat's roster is both deep and really like well suited for the playoffs. If you take a closer look.
Oh yeah. I want to see Philly versus Heat in the playoffs.
That would be a great matchup. Kind of Jimmy Butler versus the old team, and yeah.
Like I feel like got a more mobile team, short, like not as big in terms of size against like the Heat versus the Sixers, who just got some big dogs with Horford and Embiid, who could probably mash up in the paint.
Yeah. Well, cool. I think that's obviously we finished up, so I think that's a good place to wrap up. So thanks for joining me today, Jason. And to the listeners, if you haven't done so already, thanks for listening. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe on whatever medium you're listening to, whether it's Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify, or YouTube. And thanks for listening once again. And thanks for joining me, Jason.
Thanks, man.